So today we're going to go through a relationship panel. So we collected some different questions regarding relationships, marriage, things like that. Here's what I'm going to ask of you. So often, here's what I notice in the Christian church, is that we start hearing relationships and we tune out because we auto assume, oh, well, this isn't deep theological teaching. So, deep biblical, and we start to tune out, and we don't actually realize that if you read through the Bible, God doesn't do anything without using groups of people. Like literally from the very beginning, what does he decide to use as his vessel for his ministry, for what he's doing in the earth? People. And so when we talk about relationships and we talk about how to resolve conflict, how we do life and communicate with one another and how we share in friendship and community, it is deeply important and deeply theological. Okay? Yeah. Theological is a very fancy word for just, it's God's way of doing something. Okay? It's the understanding of how God is. Okay? Do you guys tracking with me? So I want you to take this seriously. Like, please don't just tune out and be like, "Oh, relationships." I'd rather Ethan be teaching out of the book of Acts. The book of Acts is completely about the church and the people moving and working together. So, are we good? Yes. We good, babe? Would you like to launch us into our first question?
Yeah. So our first question is: how has seeking feedback from your spouse and friends changed your relationships?
Kate, Nate, would you?
One of you guys want to start on that one?
I don't seek feedback. I think probably of the four of us, because we've had conflict in relationship, I'm probably the least likely to want to really confront something. I feel like I have lists of things on my own that I want to improve about my life. And so asking for feedback from other people seems very intimidating, especially because I'm married to Nate likes a lot of feedback. He's not afraid of the challenge of it. So, yeah, I don't know. I'll just start by saying that not everybody will be the type of person who's desiring a lot of feedback all the time. So for me, that just comes with a lot of I have to put some armor on, okay, I'm about to receive some feedback. I gotta get prayed up or whatever, but yeah. Go ahead, Nate.
It's very vulnerable and you're putting yourself out there to be essentially potentially wounded if it's not handled the right way. Yes. Right?
I oddly love it. I don't know why. I think it's good for me to have. I do so much better with clear communication and I once proposed to some friends a question a few years ago, and the question was, what do you know about me that I don't know about me that I should know about me? Mm-hmm. And that question was it's a dangerous question completely to get destroyed, emotionally, because
you got to say it to the right people.
Yeah, if you give that to the wrong person, they're going to give you it can hurt your heart and your feelings and all sorts of stuff. But I gave it to people who I'd really trusted because I really felt there are some areas of my life that I have a tendency to be an excavator in life. I'll just be oh, move that, let's do all this stuff. And I'm doing things completely wrong. And I think that I'm not. I have that gift. So, so feedback for me is it's really good for me. And that question, I gave that to a couple people over the years, and they gave me some just very true things. And then I even had them text it to me because I knew I would change what they said. Subconsciously, my mind would be they didn't mean it that way. They meant to say that you're great. So I had them text it
They
to me.
didn't mean that I was abrasive. They meant I was a good leader.
Yeah, exactly. So in that, in the feedback, and I've had, even with our relationship with Kate, for us as a couple over the 20 some years has been interesting because she is just way more delicate emotionally than I am. But when she hits one of my nerves, of my delicacies, that I'm just oh, it's just strange. So I like feedback from friends and I'll ask for it generally.
Yeah.
So when you're giving feedback, keep people like Katie in mind of
Yeah, I've learned that too.
it is important giving feedback and receiving feedback to do so with gentleness and kindness, because the right thing said in the wrong way is the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I find, like, for me at my current job, I'll give feedback to people via Teams or email rather than face to face. And I would say 90% of the time when I have done that, it's taken poorly. So even unless somebody's requesting, like Nate, give me feedback over text, right? Most of the time, feedback is way better given face to face. So that, because I think it's 80% of our communication is done by body language. Like the way you perceive the person talking to you is huge. But I want to hit on Proverbs 15:31. It says, it's almost like we're pastors. It says, the ear that listens to life-giving reproof will dwell among the wise. Whoever ignores instruction despises himself, but he who listens to reproof gains intelligence. The fear of the Lord is instruction in wisdom, and humility comes before honor. So when I wrote that down, I was thinking about, like, a lot of times we don't want to have feedback because we like to think we're in honor. Feedback feels like you can get discounted, degraded, brought low, and it's actually really good for us. It's actually an act of, like, humility to go, you know what? I don't have it all together. I don't get it right every time. The way I respond is not always the best way. And I think, like, in our age and in our society, you guys, like, think about what things you're listening to. Like, the narratives right now that you're hearing are, you're entitled to your opinion. Scarlett, it's my opinion. But, like, this whole, like, you're entitled to your opinion, and you need to live your truth and things like that. That stuff, it's like, yeah, everybody has an opinion, but not every opinion is correct. Or even this, not every opinion is nice, or kind or loving, and not every opinion matches up to the gifts of the Spirit. So with that, when we get feedback from each other, it's a way of submitting ourselves underneath of our brothers and sisters so that we would get sharpened and molded and shaped into a better version of ourselves, because a lot of times we don't realize that, like, or even that our resting face is not a very nice face.
Which sometimes, sometimes I just can't change that.
Yeah, sometimes you can't change that. But it's helpful to know, like, I've had people, they're like, you're really intimidating. I'm like, oh, I don't want to be intimidating.
It's that eyebrow line.
It's the eyebrow line. You shaved your head, you look aggressive now. Right? But, like, it's when you hear stuff like that, it's sometimes not given the most gentle way. Like, as a pastor, you get some really gnarly feedback. But when you hear it, it's just a reminder of, like, okay, people are experiencing something about me that I might completely not be aware of.
Yeah. So let's go on to the next one. It's, what are some effective ways to communicate openly and honestly with friends to strengthen the bond?
I love this one. Okay.
I think asking good questions with kindness and gentleness, like when you feel maybe whether you are curious about somebody or if you are offended or you're just not sure how to take somebody, sometimes just a good question or a just clarifying question can really help, especially when it's, like, done with kindness and gentleness, to say, like, I think we communicate a little bit differently. Like, what did you actually mean by this? Yeah. Or were you mad when you said this? Because I don't know if I caught you at a bad time. Like, those kinds of things, just asking good questions of people to try to understand more. I think it comes from, like, more of a humble point of view, instead of thinking, well, I know what they meant and it was definitely this, to just take the more humble approach of, like, assuming that they meant good, Yeah.
Which that builds really well off of what I wrote down, which is it's assuming that you need to assume the best in the other person. How fast are we to just assume that person, they hate me, they don't want anything to do with me, or they only said that because they wanted to jab me? You know what I mean? Like, we start assuming that the intentions of the person across from us are awful. And it's just not all, I would say 90% of the time, it's not even real because we experience this and then we attack it. And so I want to kind of build off of what you said of like, I love that what you said is ask questions, because what that is it makes it not accusational. It makes it so that when you come to them, you can tell them, this was my experience. Did you mean for that to be my experience with you? It's not like you're a problem, you're angry, you're the worst. It's way less finger pointing, and it's more like, hey, we're friends and this didn't feel like friendship, And Nate, Lydia?
I'll just add with that something. I know all of us have used this, but it's like a Brene Brown type conversation starter of like, this is the story in my head that I'm telling myself. And then starting transparently because, we all have those interactions with people where we then take home the experience and we build a story of like, they must think this about me. They must think this, and this is why they did it. And so it's very like leveling the playing field to go to that person and be like, this is the story that I'm telling myself. Can you correct that if it's wrong? And to just humbly approach it that way. I think that's a really good starter to even that allows not just the transparency of telling somebody your thoughts or your account of what happened, but it opens up the vulnerability of sharing how it affected you with your feelings. Because transparency is not really enough. Transparency is just recounting your thoughts, what happened, but you need to open up your heart to be like, and it made me feel insecure. And I felt this way. So I misunderstood. I took it in my head a different way. And now I'm telling myself something that's not real, but correct my story of what I've made up.
Yeah.
So
I think that goes into the idea of just the truth of what's going on. Like, because sometimes like within like the trust of a relationship, you negate checking the truth of what is going on, because that's a scary thing to do. But in doing that and asking some questions that aren't trying to lead each other away from each other, but to find where you're both at in it.
mm-hmm.
I have, for me, it's starting with listening. Like James, he says, be slow to speak, slow to be angry, and quick to listen. And also trying to see it from what's going on from their perspective. That's really changed that's changed me over the years, to slow down and just try to see it. Even if I'm kind of like, I don't even want to let go of the idea that your perspective is completely nuts. Like, like where you're like, I don't even know how I could even see it from how you see it. But when I slow down and I'm slow to speak and slow to even get angry about whatever it is, and just listen to try to get the vantage point of how the person or people are seeing something, I found that to be very helpful at work. And just not even from like a spiritual level, but just general work with people. You work with so many, I interact with so many different floors at the hospital, different personalities at the hospital. And sometimes we're locked in a room together for hours doing a procedure. So there's times where you're kind of like, for me to slow down and not be so apparent with what I think about something, but to be able to listen and get their vantage point has really helped me out.
Can I jump in on that? And I think where Nate's saying you need to be somebody who's listening. Here's the thing. I'm about some of you sitting next to your spouse. You're like, are you listening to this? Listen up right here. I'm not talking about Lydia, but I'm just saying some of you are like, no, just kidding. So with that listening aspect, there's a difference between listening to respond and listening to understand. When you use your ears to not just be like, I'm just waiting to jab you back, I'm waiting to prove you wrong. When you're actually listening, you're like, I'm not actually interested in who's right or wrong here. I want to know what's going on. You know what I mean? That I think is like what Nate's that slow to speak thing. It's not just being slow to speak because it's like, oh, just let the other person talk so you can jab them back. It's to actually listen with ears to be like, I actually want to understand you because I love you. Yeah,
and I've learned too that with friends, I may not even have the permission to like speak into something that I think I see, or even with people, just like the enough relational foundation to talk about certain things. I found that at different times with, thinking of like the effect of being open and honest, and then realizing I'm being open and honest about things that there's no groundwork here for this conversation. So kind of like even like tapping the brakes on that and trying to build more foundation within the relationship to then speak to each other about it. That was something I've been definitely guilty of over the years, just coming in like pretty hot and heavy.
Well, and one thing too, in experience relationship with you two, in having like some harder conversations or just raw conversations and things like that. Like one thing that you guys helped me remove out of my language was, oh, well, I'm just a brutally honest person. And I remember, I think it was maybe both of you at the same time. You guys were like, I don't know how that fits with the fruit of the Spirit. Cause like, where does gentleness come in? So like this idea of, well, I'm just a brutally honest person. I'm blunt. It's like, no, that's actually not a gift. Like that's actually unhelpful language. So when, like, I used to kind of pride myself as just being somebody like, oh yeah, whether you want it or not, you're going to get it, you know?
Because I'm being honest.
Yeah, I'm being honest.
And honest is good.
Yeah.
But.
And it's not, it's not when it's used abrasively, you know? I think like feedback is a lot more like a scalpel than a baseball bat. You know what I mean? Well, it takes some precision. It's not just a wham, you know? No, the next question we have, which didn't Kate just absolutely kill it with her marriage sermon last week? Wasn't that so good? So good.
I've given her a lot of material to work with over the years. Listen with your face, people.
Listen with your face. So the next question is, what does the husband being the head of your marriage look like for you both? So for us, what does that mean for the husband to be the head? Because Kate did a really good job kind of expounding on what does the head of the household really mean from a biblical context. And it may have kind of messed up. You may have listened to it and been like, I have never heard it put this way, so I don't know whether I agree with it or disagree with it. And that's real, you know, but sometimes the biblical context really can confront when you get into what it actually meant. It needs to reframe kind of how we understand it. So what does it look like for you guys?
Sure. So I think, and I agree with what you said. Like these things are definitely up for conversation to talk about. Like, you know, if you didn't agree with exactly the way I put it, I feel like that's okay. Like it's a really good starting place to talk about, well, what does this look like and what does this mean? But in our relationship, like based on my understanding of the husband being the head as Christ is the head, being someone who serves, I'm going to build you up a little bit, but...
And then she's going to tear you down.
Two microphones.
I think...
Build him up and tear him down, okay? We all want to watch.
Sweep the leg.
In our marriage, it's really easy to see because Nate works really hard. He works a full-time job that is stressful and intense at times. And he'll come home and he'll make dinner and he'll play with Bear and he'll wrestle with him and fight with him. He'll be working on the cars on the weekends, like fixing things. He's definitely not like, I feel like it's easy to think like you need to have dinner on the table when I get home because I'm working so hard and I don't work right now. So it's easy to have that feeling of like the pressure of like, well, I need to be like pulling my weight. But that just hasn't been the case. I feel like in our marriage, he is the best servant in our house. He is the one who does a lot to serve others. And so I feel like that is what it looks like practically.
You're so sweet.
You never tore him down. That was great.
I tried to throw in a butt, but you didn't go for it.
That's my boo. I think it's looked like actually putting the actual marriage before myself. Like that idea that it's us, it's the communal good over the individual. It's knowing that the body is going in the same direction as the head.
Yeah.
And I have this like wonky, I'm just going to tell you guys. You guys remember the movie 300? Yeah, you do. It's not spiritual. I'm not recommending it. I'm just going to tell you a section of it that I was just like, I want that to be, that's me and Kate. There's a scene, I know, I'm not the pastor, so.
I'll clean this up for him.
He's just regretting everything. There's a scene where the Persian messenger comes to him and then Leonidas, they're at the thing, and they're talking, he's doing all this stuff. And then he's like, you're a madman, because he's like going to kill him. And then there's this one moment where he's looking around at all his like, his people, and then he looks at his wife, and she's just like, And he's like, this is spot. And he kicks the guy into the thing. And I was just like, that's me, Kate. I do not have abs, and I've never kicked a man into a hole, but I purchased a car once that was exactly the wrong car to buy. And it was a disaster of a decision. And Kate was in on it with me. And she never once was like, you goober, like, what were you doing? No, we just did it together. And I feel like that to me is like, I don't hold on to the idea of the head of the house is me. It's the head of the house is the Lord. And it's who's like, I will never give away Kate's abilities and Kate's talents and her gifts and her leadership and everything, because I think it's a gender role. I think of it as we both love the Lord and we both want to put the Lord first individually. So then when we come together, if Kate makes an idea of a decision, if this is what we should do, I'm going to roll in and be like, okay, I trust you. So if you're doing that, I'm going to be the one like kick him in the chest, vice versa. I've always like, that's how, when I think of like as us as like I'm weird that way. Okay.
I like the 300 references in your notes.
It is. I didn't want to 300. Yeah. Oh, Lord. So yeah, that's it for me. That's kind of the thing. It's that the head and the body move together. It's not yanking one or the other in a direction. It's making a decision together and owning it together. That's the biggest part for my heart. Because there's times if Kate threw me under the bus for a decision, there's things that all of your opinions, I value your opinions in my life at like different levels of, closest to my heart. But at the end, it's Kate's that is everything to me. So for us to not be on the same page, it's like, it's turmoil to me. Yeah. So that the head of the house portion is that we go together in it.
Yeah. And I think this question's worth diving into, because I think as people, we want to put a label on something to make sense of it and to just understand it. Like if I look down and I'm like, this is an iPhone. It's like, I didn't have to like look at it much. I've seen something like this before quite a bit. It's an iPhone. And I think you can look at a marriage where you see, the man as the provider, the breadwinner, the woman at home, and you can just make an assumption of what that looks like because you've seen it played out. And so I think it's important to kind of dive into like what Katie did last week of, okay, what does scripturally it look like though? And what are we actually responsible for within our marriage, and not just forms that have been created over the past, couple centuries or more than that. So, cause you could look at ours, it's similar where Ethan, I have not worked a job since our kids were little, where I'm actually like really providing for the family. But we work in the efforts that we do for our household, we work an even amount, and not that it even needs to be this 50-50 type thing, but it was very much so the goal is the family unit. And for us, we were like, you know what, we function better. Our kids are provided for better when we're a single income family, so that one of us can be the primary caretaker. So it was one of those things going into it. It wasn't well, you're the man. I was actually the breadwinner when we first got married until we had Grayson. And
me too, Lydia. Me too.
We don't like to bring that up, though.
But it was one of those things where it was like, it made more sense for like how God wired each of us even. Like I am such a better cook than him. It doesn't make sense for me to eat ramen every night. Like I want to eat good food. And so I think that it's just worth diving into what does it biblically mean and what are we biblically obligated towards? Not what a society made us obligated to, but like what are we biblically obligated to? And that is to like love each other, to respect each other, and to love the Lord, like and pursue him first, and it'll work out along the way.
Yeah, and I think that like if you take what is society telling us about this right now, it is oh no, toxic masculinity, okay? We have too much masculinity, so we need to throw out the benefits of the masculine to help the feminine. Or the opposite, and then we'll swing the other way. Then it'll be no, like feminine power, no, we're not into that, so we got to take away all the gifts and strengths of this party to help the other party feel secure. But in reality, the masculine and the feminine were built together out of the same stuff. Like you think about God made Eve out of Adam. That means they're made out of the same stuff. That means they complement each other. They're built for and unto each other. And so like with our marriage, it's not just like Ethan's the most powerful. No, it's like we lean on each other's strengths. And I think that they're like one thing that was really helpful for us, which I don't know after Kate's message last week that I fully agree with it because your message conflicted with this idea, but hear me out. So I heard it, this was helpful when we first got married because I had tons of opinions about everything. How many got opinions about stuff, right? Like this is the color we should paint this bedroom. This is the curtains we should have. This is the kind of couch we should have, the TV, like I had an opinion about everything in our house, everything that Lydia did. And we went to a marriage conference and the speakers had said this and it has helped us so much, which they're like, the woman gets 99% of the decisions. The man gets the 1%, those 1% big life altering, things, which we don't operate that way where it's like, well, I'm the 1%. So I get to choose where our kids go to school and I get to choose where we go to church, how we go to church and things like that. But it did help me go, oh, you know what? Like, I don't need to have an opinion about everything. I can trust you and lean on you, and you can lean on me.
And it's mutual submission. So if you are both pursuing, I know that it can get hairy if you're in a relationship with somebody who maybe is not following the Lord. So take this with that preface. But if you are both pursuing the Lord and you are listening to His Spirit, most likely you will lean towards the same decision each time anyway. Sure. So I think about, if women are to submit to their husbands and serve their husbands as Christ served the church, I think about Jesus traveling from town to town. The disciples didn't choose where He went. He picked the direction, but He only did and went where His Father told Him to go. And so I think that if you are both, first and foremost, your goal is to please the Lord and just be in His will and serve Him, most of the time you'll be in the same spot. But
yeah, it really boils down to submission to each other. I want to again go back to you've heard it said by society, what's in it for me? Like how many we just watched a movie last night. How many movies have you guys seen where this couple meet and then they're going to get married and they're engaged and oh no, conflict. What's the conflict? I have to choose between my career or you.
Yeah.
I've got to choose between my hobby or you. And so what happens is in society, it's, well, do what's best for you. And so we see in these movies, the guy that was so right for this girl, he chooses his career over her, and we see how destructive that is. And that's actually kind of good that Hollywood sometimes does that. But then we see it the other way where it's like the movie La La Land is the one that just gets me so angry because they both pick their career over each other. And in the end, you're like, you should have been together. But they had a what's in it for me thing. And here's the deal is we are taught that before we even get married. So there's people in this room, you may have learned this, or maybe you've experienced divorce or things like that. If you walk into a relationship with a what's in it for me, you don't understand what relationship is. Mm-hmm. Relationship isn't what's in it for me. It's what's in this for you.
Yeah. It's our biblical obligation to lay one's life down for another. So you can always go back to that.
And I just want to make one more statement on this, that when we believe that we are married, but I have my goals and you have your goals, that's actually an oxymoron. That's a individual behaving in an individual way who's in a relationship. Mm-hmm. Did you hear me? Husbands, wives, if you have a bank account and your wife have a bank account, that is two individuals living two individualistic lives. It's an oxymoron. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, you're married, but you're not. It's, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not trying to step on toes. I'm not trying to be divisive, but there's a reality of you submit unto one another. You have to lean into trusting the other. You have to lean and yield yourself to the other, even when it doesn't necessarily feel good.
Can you talk about your goals date that you do every year? and kind of like what that's looked like for vision within your marriage?
Yeah, I do. I really want to talk about that because with what Ethan was saying, that doesn't mean you don't have individual goals.
Yeah.
Like Ethan wants to do a half Ironman.
And I am not doing it.
And so I feel like that's very much an individual goal. That's going to take up his time away from Lydia and the kids and, other things that he's doing. So,
but I don't choose that over what's best for my family. Right. That's where like
you guys have talked about it.
Yeah. Like I have that individual
He's going to get up
goal,
early while I'm sleeping.
but it's yeah.
And Lydia ran a marathon not long ago.
Yeah.
Yep.
It doesn't
But
trump it.
I just say that to say that so Nate and I get together, we've been doing this for probably like 10 years, we'll say. We make goals together every year of things that we want to accomplish for our family and our household. So like different goals we've had over the years was like Nate had a goal to get into the nursing program. So he applied, he got in, like that was 13 years ago. So we've had different goals like that over the years, whether they were career related or personal or whatever they were. But we will usually have dinner together. We call it a business dinner at the end of the year, usually to talk about our goals for that year and how we did, and then make some goals for the next year. So they've ranged like, sometimes they are like, running a 5K or something like that. Or sometimes they're like, I don't know, you give some different examples. It could have been going to school, buying a car, saving for a house, like budget type goals, anything.
Changes. I don't know, whatever we thought, it was really it's just very practical. And the one thing we really added into it was even like the vision, like for the Lord to be like, God, what do you want us to be doing this year? Like that was like a game changer because I have friends that make way more money than me. I have friends that make less money than me. And if I don't know what I'm doing, I'm looking around the room.
Yeah.
And that's a painful place. And there's been too many times that we've been on our back deck in the middle of the summer while our friends are doing things that I couldn't even imagine being capable to do. And we have to pull out our phone and it says, oh, this is who we are this year. We're going to be generous. We're going to be kind. We're going to create a space for, and we have it written down. This is who we are going to be this year, because if I don't have that, I'm going to get caught up in wondering what else I should be doing and then making up things that I shouldn't have been doing. So it's been crazy helpful for our marriage because it creates just rails for the train to ride on, and it's like, so between having just general goals that we've learned to loosen it up, because sometimes we can be very intentional, almost to the point of annoyance, not almost. I know that we've annoyed people.
You got to get on their goals list before they get it down.
You got to get your ideas into us before we have our business dinner. But like, it's helped us so much. It's helped us to when we had like a New Year's Eve family thing and the whole family's about to book like some $5,000 house in some exotic place and we're all going to pitch in on it. And we literally were like, yeah, that ain't in the plan for the Thompsons. And then I'm sitting around the room like, So I shoot out a text like, Thompsons are out because it's not in our thing. Sorry, like I don't want to be a buzzkill, but we were, and nobody went on the trip. But that's what it was. It's helped us as a couple to remember what we're doing, because it's too easy to look around the room. And then we've learned a lot over the years from that, like how to just keep it a little loose, leave room for like spontaneous ideas and things like that. But it's been very helpful to us. I recommend it to all of you guys.
Yeah. The goals has been just super unifying, I think, for us over the years, because it has put us in the one year our vision was to be people who create a space for people to encounter Jesus and encourage other people to do the same. And we didn't really have a lot of resources to make that happen, but that was the year we started doing a home Bible study. And then that in turn put us in just some of the most awkward situations that brought us together more, because we learned from them, because one person showed up. So it's Nate and I and one other person.
If you want to have a weird Bible study, do that. Because you're just like, you're expecting like all of your people to come. And then they're all kind of like, hey, can't make it tonight. And then you're like oddly staring out your window. And then you're like, then you're at the point of like, Lord, send no one. Like,
at
don't
least
let
two
them come. Don't
minimum.
let them come.
Yeah, but
and
it also,
that one car rolls in and you're like, excellent. But it's But to look back, it was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And it had us reading our Bibles together and stuff like that. So it does create a lot of unity, even just like the goals themselves create more unity, even than just making them together.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, we're going to jump down. The next question was, what is the most rewarding part about being in community? What's the most challenging thing? And how do you overcome those obstacles? And this is something I've heard even in our own context here at the Clearing, of people being like, man, I don't know. Like, community is both awesome and hard at the same time. So what's the most rewarding part about it?
I have the most rewarding part is just that life support, of like joys and sorrows. Like you have people that you're celebrating with, friends, it's just a great place to be when you can celebrate with your friends when they have a win.
Yeah.
And then being available in like a crisis for someone else. And those two very things to me are the exact challenge of the whole idea. Just like you said with community, it's not comparing, it's not falling into jealousy. It's you find that you might not be available to celebrate and, or even to comfort. Like that's the challenge. If you're in an unhealthy, or if you're just in a spot, I don't even know if I want to call it unhealthy. I don't know. I'm not, but you can be in a spot with the community where you want to be the one to get a win. And then you see other people winning and you're just like, yeah, and then like somebody has this like tragedy and then it's hard when you weren't even able to celebrate them when they won. And now you're kind of like, how do I comfort them in this tragic moment? So now you put yourself in this bizarre position that you couldn't do one or the other. So it's like, it's strange because community brings everything to the front. And then I think, and again, to go back to, I'll keep going with this. I'm going to stay in my notes. One-sided vulnerability, I think, is where that'll get you there. It's when you're willing to let somebody kind of tell you about what their problems are, but you don't really go into what your stuff is. And you kind of like hold this position of just like you're willing to be, it's almost like a false community because you're coming into it nervous and shaky and you don't know what you don't want to be too vulnerable or anything, but you're allowing other people to be. And then you put yourself you position yourself within the community to always have a way out and that you don't have that vulnerability on your own. And within that, that's a bad place because you don't share your insecurities.
Yeah.
But I think that's the two things for me is to have the community. It's so beautiful. Mm-hmm. It just takes work. It takes time. Mm-hmm. And again, even to lean on to if it's been so helpful for us to be a part of bigger community like the whole church, going back to what we just said about the vision and the goals. When we know what we're doing, you're getting a version of us that isn't as easily teetered because I'm not going to be pulled or pushed around because I know what the Lord has for us.
Yeah.
So when I'm coming into the community, I'm bringing in intention that I can engage with you in your celebrations and in your sorrows.
Yeah. I think too, the benefit of community is you get to experience in that other people's wins, their ceiling becomes like your new floor. Where like, I can't say enough about how like these two have taught us about our marriage. But then there's been times where like we come to them and we're like, man, I don't even know what to do. Or we've gone on hikes and we're talking about stuff going on and you're like, what do you do? And there's that like where he's like, oh yeah, like there's been times where Nate's like, oh yeah, this happened to us 5 years ago. This is what I did. And it's like immediately his ceiling of his victory is like, oh, that's what you do. You submit, or, oh, you did this. And so the victories of my friends actually become my victories as well. And that's what community offers is like the people in this room. It's like there's people in this room who have overcome addiction, and that's opportunity for you. There's people in this room who have, Amber and Scott, it's like where they were divorced. Now they're not divorced. They're back together. It's like that's a victory that offers and lends itself to everybody else in the room where, there's these things that are in the community that if you don't take hold of, you lack the healing and forgiveness and wholeness that can come with the community. But the hardest part is that vulnerability. It's that submitting to each other and being honest and transparent, which I am going to speak about next week, about just like, how do we handle just being raw and showing the worst side of ourselves and being honest when things are not going well. And because it is a bummer when you're in community and then you find out somebody's been living in a dumpster fire, but then on Sundays they act like they're not in a dumpster fire. And then you find out they're just it's just not good. And you're like, man, I wish I could have helped. I mean, I wish I could have like said, hey, like, I want to love you. I want to go get coffee with you. I want you should read this book. Like, what can I offer you that has helped me? And it's a bummer when we can't do that. And so that's why, like, in a church setting, especially here at the Clearing, guys, like, I do not want us to be a people where we see each other on Sundays and we all behave one way, and then we see each other out in public and we're like, that's not even the person I saw on Sunday. Yeah. That's hypocrisy. Mm-hmm. It's not life. Like, true life is like offering to each other forgiveness and healing. I did write this down. When it comes to the difficulty of community, it is that lack of vulnerability. But I have this amazing quote from Brennan Manning from his book, Abba's Child. That was supposed to make you guys laugh because I reference it so often. It says, Christians who remain in hiding continue to live the lie. We deny the reality of our sin. In a futile attempt to erase our past, we deprive the community of our healing gift. If we conceal our wounds out of fear and shame, our inner darkness can neither be illuminated nor become light for others. We cling to our bad feelings and beat ourselves with the past when what we should do is let go. As Dietrich Bonhoeffer said, guilt is an idol. But when we dare to live as forgiven men and women, we join the wounded healers and draw closer to Jesus. And that's what community is. It's that getting through the, like, yeah, we all have like the shadow side. We all have like these moments where we just utterly fail. Mm-hmm. But when we bring that into the light, what does it become? It becomes light. Mm-hmm. And it becomes healing to those around us who might be in the dark and pretending to be in the light. And you can say, no, dude, it's so much better out here in the light. It's better to be known than try to have a good reputation. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, I think I'll just add one thing. Practically played out, staying home every night is comforting, but in seasons of celebration or tragedy, it is completely debilitating. Mm-hmm. So no, it's comfortable day to day, staying home, reading a book, playing video games, doing whatever. But the second you have a baby, second you graduate college and no one's there, the second that, you have a loved one pass away and no one is close to you to comfort you, you become made gravely aware of how much you needed that community. And at that point, you're like, dang, it feels too late, So I think it's just worth knowing that, like, it doesn't matter if you're an introvert, if you're tired because you work a lot, it's worth getting out there and being with people because you were made to be with people. You were not made to be alone. We are not introverted creatures. That idea, even to me, I'm like, it doesn't really make sense because we were created to meet each other. Mm-hmm. So in different capacities, you don't have to be out with like 20 people, but go to coffee with one or, let somebody in.
I would just add that I think we think we know what our life is going to bring us, and we don't. Like, yeah. You don't know what you're going to need. You don't know what kind of advice or whose help you will need. And that's why being a part of a community is really important. And so to me, the best thing about being in community is just like you were saying, like having access to other people's experiences. Like, I remember, I'm going to cry, but it's okay. I remember I had surgery about 2 years ago, and I had so much anxiety after, and I had never had that before. And I didn't know how to deal with it, but thankfully I had a friend who did. So I remember I would call Cheryl on the phone, and I would just like watch her eat her dinner. And she would just talk me through it. She'd been there before and she knew what it was like. She knew it was going to be okay. She knew I wasn't crazy. So that was really helpful. She knew I would get through it. And I didn't know that I would have needed that. I thought maybe I would have needed Nate because he's a nurse. He has medical knowledge. I felt like maybe I would have known what I needed, but I wouldn't have seen that coming from like 10,000 miles away because it just was like, it was so surprising to me. Yeah. And you don't know what you will need. You don't know what's coming next in life. And I feel like it's just important to value your community and all of the varied experiences that people have. So even when you're with people who are very different from you, you might not have a lot in common, but there might be a day when you do all of a sudden. Yeah, and then you see that for what it is, and you have so much value for their experience.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you.
Yeah, let's try. We'll go to the next one. Before I read one quote, okay? John Ortberg, he says, "We may sin alone, but we heal together."
Yeah,
and there's actually scholars who they believe like there is no such thing as healing without people, where our destruction happens with people, but like God uses our community and our people and the people around us to heal us. Mm-hmm. And so like this idea of, well, I'll get alone and then I'll get healed, that's just not real. It's not going to help you. Like isolation, it doesn't work. If you're going to be isolated, go be alone with people who love Jesus. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's a good way to like get healed. But being like, oh, I'm just going to go off by myself. I need a couple months to be alone. It's not going to help. Yeah. Every person I've ever seen do that ends up they're on their own. They're doing their thing. And then their spirit and their love for the Lord just declines over time. Mm-hmm. So the next one is, how do you resolve conflict with the people that you love?
I'll start. Quickly. I think it's one of the biggest things I've learned over the years is to not let things just be. There is no, it'll blow over. It's important to resolve them quickly, transparently, and to own your side of it. There can be no reconciliation where there is not repentance or confession. So being quick to say sorry, being quick to, even if you feel like you didn't do anything wrong, if you said it harshly, you did something wrong, or, that type of thing. So being quick to apologize, to ask for forgiveness. Yeah.
I like to call this planting the flag. When you experience conflict with somebody, just address it fast. Because here's the deal. What happens when you don't address it quickly? It grows into a seed of bitterness and anger and frustration. And then all of a sudden, where you used to be able to look at somebody and see the image of God in that person, now all you see is
what happened.
Yeah, what happened there, bitterness, anger, and you start to morph this image of God that the person actually carries. And so if you address it quickly, doing this both with your family and with your friends, you plant the flag. And this is essentially what I do every time I confront anybody about anything is, boom, flags in the ground. What's the flag? We are on the same team. And that's helpful. Like, we are on the same team. I'm not going anywhere. I love you, but here we have conflict right now. So we got to figure this out. And the only way you're getting out of this is if you pick up that flag and walk away. You know what I mean? Like, that's really intense, I know, but I'm an intense person. But that for me is like, when I experience conflict, I could use me and my dad as an example. We have really similar personalities. We're both high type A personalities. We have conflict, but when we have conflict, we address it quickly, because we know if we don't, that thing will grow and morph and turn into something not healthy or good. And so it's like, no, hey, this happened. I didn't like the way that felt. Well, oh, that's okay. That's not actually what I meant. I'm sorry. That's not. And then all of a sudden you start to realize, you're like, you know what? We were just really intense, playing on, you're on the football field and you're yelling at each other because you're so passionate about the game, right? But you don't realize it's like, oh, does this make sense? Yeah. Sometimes life just gets quick and starts moving fast and things are happening. And if you don't remember, we're on the same team. This is my goal of having this conversation is that we would remain in good communication and good relationship. Brad and I, same thing. Have we had these conversations, right? Where it's like, hey, you said this and I didn't like that. That hurt my heart. And it felt like you meant this. Is that what you meant? He's like, no, not at all. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? And it's this opportunity to say, I'm not going to allow this idea that was planted in my head of what I thought you meant, or what I thought you were doing, get in the way of relationship with us. So let's like put the flag in and say, no, that we're not moving. We are friends. We are going to make it through this. We're going to resolve this conflict.
Well, and it offers humility to be willing to have the awkward conversation, because you can hear him saying it and it sounds like you just have so much like bravery to go and have the conversation. No one, no matter how much they say they like conflict resolution, no one doesn't feel scared or awkward going and having the conversation. It's terrifying, but you're doing it with the goal of staying connected and being closer at the end of it. So it's a beautiful thing, because you're offering your humility by being like, I'm willing to put myself out there as weak.
Yeah.
Like, this is weak of me to say, hey, this affected me. This hurt my feelings. Maybe you didn't mean to. And now I look like I'm super sensitive, but maybe I am. And it's just this beautiful moment for the other person to be able to like build you back up or apologize for what they need to apologize for, or anything like that.
And it's reminding yourself the discomfort I'm about to feel right now is better than the discomfort I will feel if I leave this alone.
Yeah. Or if I lose this friend over it.
Like I'd rather this thing get nipped now than this thing grow and morph into this huge, massive problem that gets intertwined with other people because of gossip and burns. And, it's like, just take care of it. Otherwise it's a cancer and it'll grow.
Yep.
I've experienced, I guess, over all of the years of just friendships, I've had friendships. I've been very fortunate to have some that are like 35 years long. Like I've said, it's been great, but sometimes people in my life don't want the same type of resolution that I want, is what I've discovered. And that's really hard. That is so hard for me. And if resolve is hard to achieve, I've learned to ask the Lord to keep my heart soft.
That's good.
Because my heart is like a cement mixer, I feel like it wants to harden things up and like solidify it and make it, this is how it is. Mm-hmm. And sometimes and again, if we even go within like the whole, like just, if I keep it in house, it's just me and Kate, like we're opposite in a lot of things emotionally. And if resolve doesn't look like how I want it, it's hard for me. Like, because I feel like I'm not getting the resolve that I want. Like, I want the person to not even necessarily to agree with me. I just want them to get to the end point with me. And sometimes they don't want to do that. And so I feel like in those times, I've really resorted to like, Lord, keep my heart soft, because it wants it bad. Like it wants, like, I want the resolve more than the friendship. Mm-hmm. And that's a scary place. Like that's unhealthy to me. Yeah. It's like, I want to make it right. We need to make this right. Put a light on it. Like, I'm just very like, let's all get in the mud and clean it up. Like I have zero problem with that. I've learned it takes time. It takes more time than I want generally. Sometimes it takes less time than I want. Like it's just that those things, like I've learned that for the Lord to just, I ask him often, like, keep my heart soft. Like in the waiting, keep my heart soft, Lord. I don't want to make up stories. I don't want to start solidifying my own resolve, because I've found over like the course of time, I was wrong. That's different. What? That's unfamiliar ground for me, but like, it's strange. Like when things take time, depending on how you process, like I've found to keep my heart soft has been so helpful to me.
I can just add to that. Like, how do you keep your heart soft? I think it's what we see in Jesus. He's on the cross. Forgive them, Father. They don't know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's my position when I plant the flag. If somebody walks away from that flag, the flag represents not just me, it represents us. If you walk away from us, my position is, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Or even forgive me for anything I didn't know I did. You know what I mean? And it's just the Christian community is a community of forgiveness. That's what we live and breathe, forgiveness. That's what we do.
I was going through the Lord's Prayer. This would have been a couple of years ago. And just that sentence, man, it cut me deep. When he's like, when you say, forgive me of my debts, as I forgive my debtors. And I just thought, what do I owe these people, this person, this company, my wife, my son, like, what do I owe? that hit me so hard because it's just so easy to believe you have the right position.
Yeah.
So it's like in Hebrews 12, it says, make every effort to live in peace with everyone and to be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one falls short of the grace of God and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many. And I think like that starts in your own garden, like that starts in my heart, like the roots that want to grow up. I cannot control the roots that grow in Rod. If we have a disagreement or whatever, however it goes, I can ask the Lord, keep these bitterness roots out of me, at least for their Lord. Like that, I think is the softening of the heart for me. And then to make an effort to live in peace. Peace is not a passive thing. It's and to cause there to be peace. Sometimes that's it's me being quiet, and giving time. I don't know. So I don't know how far I'm falling in a hole right now, but
That's good.
if anybody wants to start talking, I'm fine with that.
The last thing I would say about resolving conflict is that life is so short, and the scriptures say our life is like a vapor, and it comes and goes so quickly that some of these things we want to resolve quickly, but there are some things that we're going to need to let go of, like determining what's a mountain and what's a molehill. What can I just let grace cover it and just, be able to move forward, especially in those times when you're not able to have a conversation or to completely resolve something. Because at the end of life, you're going to be responsible for you, and so I think it's just important to remember that life is so short and we're not promised tomorrow. So do your best to make things right today.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think that the thing we forget is, these resolving conflict for somebody within your inner intimate circle is different than resolving conflict with somebody in your external circle. Why? Because somebody in the inner circle, they can hurt you a lot more. It's way more painful. Like you could be in this room and you're a stranger to me, and you could say, Ethan, you're whatever. You could just insult me, and I'm going to be like, man, that's a bummer. I'm sorry you're having a bad day, But then if Nate said the same thing to me, that would wound me. It wouldn't just, It would be like, whoa, what just happened? There would be a flashbang moment where it's like, wow, I'm stunned right now. What's happening? Because it's painful when the people closest to you do this. But that's why we do it, is so that way when it's like, hey, that hurt, it makes it so that you're creating those boundaries where it's like, oh, I don't want to hurt you again. I didn't mean to hurt you. And so that way you can proceed with that person better knowing how you may affect them. And then the other thing too is, guys, is just give some get out of jail free cards. Like that. There's so many times where Lydia and I come home and somebody came up to us at church and they just what we call spiritually throw up on us, where it's just like they critique you. They're like, you could have done this better. If you would have done that, if you would have said this. And it's just ultra critical. It's like, there's no grace or mercy at all in it. And there's times where you could go, well, now I'm bitter towards that person. No, just sit, you know what? They had a bad day. Get out of jail free card. You know what? Just extend mercy. I forgive you. I love you. I don't need to carry that. And that's what unforgiveness, that's what judgment and bitterness wants to do. It wants to put a load on you for you to carry that everywhere you go. And ultimately, some people who are broken, that's their goal, is they're like, I want you to feel how broken and heavy I am. So here's a little bit of this, right? And you're all about to go into Thanksgiving, and you're probably going to have some family members who want to do that to you, right? Amen. It happens. It gives some get out of jail free card, because that's what Jesus did for you, right?
Love holds no records of wrongs.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think we had a couple more questions, but I think we need to land the plane, right?
Okay.
So yeah, guys, let's be a community that resolves conflict. I know we haven't gotten into this hugely, but I want that for us so badly, guys. I can't tell you how many church environments I've been in where people experience conflict and they just act like it didn't ever happen. or they leave, or it's like, oh, I jabbed you, and oh, like we had conflict, and now I'm just going to avoid you. I'm not going to text you anymore. But we're all part of the same family of God, right? Because and ultimately the only reason they're doing that is because that's their normal. But guess what? Here, let's not make that our normal. Like that doesn't need to be normal here. Like here, it needs to be, if you have an issue with your brother, go to them and resolve it. Okay, if you have an issue with the person that you love, go and resolve it. It doesn't need to be a battle. It's a put the stake in the ground. No, we're brothers and sisters in Christ. What does that mean? That means we stick together. That means that at the end of the day, we have to go to our Father's table, and that's awkward when you're at the table and you're like, I don't know what to do with the person sitting across from me, and that ultimately there's an eternal judgment coming. You understand? Like there's actually like eternal judgment when we just walk in bitterness and frustration and things like that. Jesus was merciful and patient and kind. Okay. So we need to extend mercy, extend grace to our brothers and sisters, and don't just like shove stuff under the rug. Like, oh, they didn't, just deal with it. Okay. We'll teach more on it, but yes, Lord, thank you so much just for this opportunity to just discuss together, Lord, what the bride of Christ looks like, how we can submit to you and unto each other, how we can follow you while we follow after your presence with the people that love you, that we love. Jesus, would you just knit us close together as a community? Would you teach us the way of relationships, the way that you have caused this tribe to be, which is a tribe of mercy, of forgiveness, of gentleness, and kindness, Lord. Help us to be more like you, Lord. We pray all of these things for your glory and our joy. In Jesus' name, amen.